Hi, this is Rick Anthony, and welcome to the Someone You Should Know podcast, the podcast that spotlights the stars of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So sit back, relax, have a cold one, and get ready to meet someone you should know. Well, the premise of the Someone You Should Know podcast is to introduce you to musicians and authors and interesting people that really deserve to be showcased. Case in point, my guest today is a guy that I've known for a very, very long time. You probably haven't heard of him, but you will hear from him now because he's an exceptional guitarist, and he's my friend. Here's Lino. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rick. Great to be here.
Welcome back, my friend. It's been since Miami Jam, which was, 2006?
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah, it was a while ago.
So we got a lot of catching up to do here in these last 16 years or so. The most recent album is called Cascadia. We're going to feature that on the show today. You're going to hear a couple songs or tunes from that particular album. Back in the day, you started, I think you told me you started, 9 or 10? Was it about that time frame that you got your first guitar?
Yeah, I showed interest in music, and my mom was encouraging, and she decided, I said, she asked me what I wanted to play, and I said, instinctually, I said a guitar. And she said, okay, let's get you some lessons. So she got me classical guitar lessons. And at 9 years old, I didn't know what the difference was of who my teacher was. So I learned classical, and I loved it, and it was cool, and then I discovered rock music a little later on, and of course I evolved beyond the classical lessons into rock and jazz and all the things that guitar players do. And I liked it all. But I was really fortunate my mom started me on classical because that gave me just a really solid foundation in music in general.
The thing is, folks, he's a musician and he's a rocker, and you might think, they're not the smartest people in the world. This guy has got 2 degrees, right? You've got a degree in history and pre-med from Miami University of Ohio, so he's no dummy, gang.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I that was an instinct I had too. I wanted to be educated. I really enjoyed what college was. The bubble of college. You're kind of isolated from the world, and your only responsibility is to get the grades and go to class for the most part. And I really enjoyed that I had that kind of control over my life, and I loved getting educated. So I didn't use anything with my degrees, but I certainly don't regret going. And my son now, he's in college, and now I get to live it back, that whole experience back through him.
Awesome. That's wonderful. The first song we're going to feature is the title cut from Cascadia. Did this become because of the fact that you're living in the Cascade Mountains in Oregon, or how did that all come to be?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Ohio, and I moved to Los Angeles when I was, I think, like 21. And to pursue my music career. We didn't have the internet and people sharing stuff from everywhere in the world, so you kind of wanted to move to a city that was musical if you wanted to be in the music business. I never really adapted to the city life, and when I got to a point in my career where I could move, I wanted to go catch trout, so I wanted to be up in nature, and I had always had this instinct, too, that I would end up in the Pacific Northwest. My parents took me around on this trip in a camper around the United States, and it just, something about this energy of this place really, I never forgot it. So I moved here, and an interesting side note you might want to know, the reason I ended up in Central Oregon with the mountains right behind my house, and hence the name of the album, that I was inspired to compose when I moved here, is that Mason Williams, who
classical gas,
famous for classical gas, right? So when I did a cover of it, it's been done 100 times because it's one of the greatest instrumental songs of the last century, and I sent him a copy of the song and the CD and thanked him for inspiring me to cover it. And he's such a wonderful, gracious man. He sent me back this gift basket, wonderful letter saying how much he appreciated my version of his song, and with all his CDs and music books, and he gave me his phone number. So I called him, and he lives in Eugene, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And I was in Los Angeles, and I said, Mason, do you think I need a change? Do you think I should come to Eugene? He says, well, Eugene's great, but he said you may want to check out Bend, Oregon, in the Central Oregon area, and see how beautiful it is. There's a lot of music going on. So I ended up here because of doing a cover song of an artist that I really respected in my youth.
Awesome. So out there might be an individual who hears this next song and say, you know something? Lino has inspired me to take up music and move to Oregon and go fishing.
Yeah, it's not a bad life.
Okay. Let's go ahead and play that song right now. Here's Cascadia from my friend Lino on the Someone You Should Know podcast. That song right there is called Cascadia. It's the title cut of the most recent project from my friend Lino. Who were some of the players on Cascadia?
Well, in general, I pretty much do all the instruments that I can. I do that with, we'll probably get to this later in the interview, but I do, if I have to do drums or bass or guitar or keyboards, mandolin, whatever, I try to cover that as much as I can. But there are specific instruments where I simply don't have the skills. And there's two people on there that I would like to mention that really made a huge difference on the album. One of them is a local guy here, a saxophone player named Andy War, who is just a monster on the saxophone. And I had a great sax player in Los Angeles, Richard Hardy, but he's in L.A. and I was up here. So I found this guy, Andy, and he's a total pro and great, and he added, and we kind of exchanged. I'm going to play on his record, he plays on mine.
Awesome.
And and if you listen to some of the really subtle and expressive saxophone lines on Cascadia, I got to give all the credit to Andy. And then the other guy, now this guy's a dear friend of mine since my early 20s in L.A. when we were in rock bands together. His name's Chris Frazier. And if you want to anyone want to check him out, he's one of the greatest rock drummers alive today. He's right now in a band. Most of your listeners probably know the band Foreigner.
Oh yeah.
He's been the Foreigner's drummer for I don't know how many years, and before that he played with the list is just really long. Wow. He's just a great. So I called him and he played drums. Here's this really great world-class rock drummer that I used to make albums with in the day. We probably did 12 projects together, and then he's playing on this instrumental stuff that's like, I don't know, smooth jazz, classical, acoustic, and he adapted really well to it. He always does. He's played on a couple of the other Lino records. I think he was on Miami Jam as well. And so I was real fortunate to have those two players that just took my compositions to the next level. So I got to give them a lot of credit.
Wow. You've got such great talent alone, but to round it out like that. I remember just listening to Miami Jam, how much I loved Chardonnay Afternoon. And the sax on the sax on that one, that song right there, just that's in one of my lists of all-time favorite songs. That's just a fabulous tune. It's just one of those songs that, I could hear any single day. And just really, it's very uplifting. It's very cool. It's got a nice groove to it. It's got a great sax line to it. Your guitar is incredible. It's just one of those great songs. So look that one up too, folks. Like Chardonnay Afternoon from Lino's last album, Miami Jam from 2006. Your music has been used on a vast number of network and cable and TV outlets and documentaries and film projects. You care to share a few?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's a long list, and I got a lot of placements and things. But I mean, anything from my rock stuff got onto a lot of sports, Major League Baseball, basketball, and I used this bumper music because I was used to, like I mentioned before, I used to be kind of a rocker before I kind of mellowed out into this instrumental guy, and a bunch of films put it in scenes. There's like Law and Order and JAG, that show that they used to air, and the Golden Globe Awards and the Emmys, and I don't the list. There's just a bunch of things like little snippets. Yeah.
Does it pay well?
Yeah, well, back then when I was in L.A. and I was connected, and those shows were airing like in America. Yeah, the royalty checks they were always welcome in my mailbox. But
so here's the thing.
But now, most of those shows, since I've left L.A. and I kind of got out of the TV and film scene, I still do some, but since I moved here up to the mountains and where I live now, all those shows, it's really funny. They've kind of been franchised out to other countries. So now when I get a check for royalties, it's from like Estonia or Peru or So, but those shows they're still airing just in other countries. So no, I was really fortunate to get in just at the right time to get a lot of placements in TV and film. And I've done some composing for independent projects where some of the funnest stuff I've ever done was to just create a score for an independent film and have to start at the beginning of the film all the way to the end and create a flow and support a scene, and it's very minimalistic compositions in many cases, but very important to the film, and I learned a lot from that. So I was just fortunate to be able to have some of those musical experiences.
That is just so cool. You, of course, we said earlier, were classically trained on the guitar, and you like to include classical compositions in your albums, especially the the works of Mozart. I remember on your last, when it was on the Return to Avalon album, you featured Divertimento #1 in D major, a different movement. This one is Presto that we're going to include next. What is your love affair with Mozart?
Now, I see him as the first rock star.
Okay.
Yeah, he had that just this rebellious attitude, but yet he was a prodigy genius. And everyone has their favorite classical composer if they're into classical music. His compositions speak to me. I like Bach a lot. There's a lot I like, but a couple of his pieces, they translated to something I thought I could do on a guitar. And to be honest, I don't know if Mozart's really irritated with me right now. Like, dude, you should have just left it alone. It was perfect as it was. And I guess I may have some explaining to do one day. But I'm also hoping he might have looked at it like, hey, dude, if I had electric guitars back then, that's exactly what I would have done. Because I kept the integrity of his symphonies. I rebuilt all the string sections to keep it exactly like he had it. Didn't change the arrangement. But on top, I would layer the guitars on the top of the violin parts, and I would put rhythm guitars on what the cellos were doing, and I would put a little bit of a rhythm section in there. And I put kind of a little rock band behind his symphony. And I just thought it was just an interpretation of something that was just a very beautiful, exciting symphony, and I love the freedom of that. So I hope Mozart fans will forgive me for taking liberties with it, but
I don't think they're going to complain. We're going to play it right now. I love the song. It's Divertimento #1 in D major, Presto, from Lino and his latest album, Cascadia. Divertimento number 1 in D major, presto, an homage to Mozart from today's guest, Lino, on the Someone You Should Know podcast. When this brilliant musician is not out recording, he loves the great outdoors of Oregon, which we talked about. You're an avid fisherman, so now is the opportunity for us to hear your best fish story.
Oh, gosh. That's a... Well, I'll give... Well, my biggest fish was a 12-foot, 400-pound plus sturgeon in the Columbia River.
Wow!
Which was like, yeah, and
Holy cow.
Fishing for those guys, it's just like weightlifting. You chase them all over the river, and then you release them. I always release my fish. By the way, people out there listening, I don't keep fish. I do a little dance with them. I connect with them. I release them unharmed. I don't really I don't fish for for food and I just do it it gets me out in nature, and I have some sport with it. My best fish stories are the ones that I've lost the fish. I had a great big steelhead on the line, my very first time steelhead fishing. This thing was the trophy, and of course it was on my first day, and I fought him fine, and he ended up getting, long story short, he pulled me in the river, basically. I tripped over a rock. I still have the scar on my shin.
Oh, my.
And when you're fly fishing in a running river, a big fish can do that, and he peeled my line out, got wrapped around a tree, but I lost him, and I have the scar to show it. So there's...
Can you mount your scar on the wall?
Exactly.
Oh, very good. Very good. Well, here's a question for you. Oh, hi, Angel. We have the studio cat Angel in with us today. He loves the shows. Now, Angel, get up, go over there, buddy. The question I have for you is, when you're out fishing, you're communing with nature, are you still thinking musically while you're out there? And if something comes to mind, do you have a little something to jot it down? Do you wander back over to the shore and try to write it down, or try to compose something while you're there?
There have been times when I'm fishing, it's kind of a zen thing, and when you're fly fishing, you're concentrating. It's not like you throw out a line, you're looking at a bobber, and you have all the time in the world to think about anything. Fly fishing is a constant focus. But yes, there's also moments when say I have a project in the studio or a song I'm working on, I will process some ideas production-wise. I don't really compose parts when I'm out doing it. My mind's too occupied with actually managing the line and the river and all that. But yes, I do. When I'm in that peaceful moment, I solve a lot of my personal life stuff going on, and I'm able to relax and calm down and get my mind in a state that is not frenzied, and I come back from fishing much clearer. So it affects everything, not just my music, but everything in my life becomes more palatable,
Awesome. Very, very good. Very good. Another song we're going to feature here is called Bitter Smooth. How'd this one come to be?
Bitter Smooth, it's got that smooth jazz thing going on, but just like everything I do on those records, I don't stick in one style. You'll hear influences from other genres than just the standard smooth jazz, but I have that element strongly in that song. And smooth for smooth jazz, bitter, I think I got that feeling because it had a little tinge of melancholy in it, and it's just a hybrid. It's a hybrid of styles that is kind of my trademark when I compose.
There is a question I have for you. Since the majority of your stuff is all instrumentals, coming up with the names, is it difficult to come up with a title once you've got the composition? Does the name come first, or does it come afterwards, or how does the naming process actually happen?
It comes early. I usually start with working titles. I'll just call it. It's the Spanish thing in A minor or something.
Okay.
But as it evolves, and sometimes the title will come early, or sometimes it will come later. And it's a little tricky because when you're a lyricist or a singer and you have a song that's generally, most songs are sung with lyrics to express a thought or idea or a story, you can name it because you have words to work with to give it a title. Like the chorus hook is what you usually put as the title. In instrumental, you don't have that, so you have to get creative, I guess. Now, you mentioned Chardonnay Afternoon. It's sometimes so just not impressive is that I was having a glass of Chardonnay with my friend sitting on a porch, and we're listening to the demo of what I was working on, and I go, she said, well, what should you name? What are you going to name this? And I go, I don't know. I looked at the glass of wine. it fits right. This is perfect. It's Chardonnay in the afternoon.
Absolutely. All right, here comes Bitter Smooth. You'll enjoy this one. It's from Lino, my guest today on the Someone You Should Know podcast. That's Bitter Smooth from today's guest, Lino, on today's Someone You Should Know podcast. I had this gentleman on back in 2006. It's been a while. We're doing a little catch-up here today. I don't remember if I addressed this to you back then, but this next section is called Tales from the Road. It's those infamous road stories of getting to a gig, playing out, something went wrong or something unusual happened that you were planning on that back in the day might have not been exactly what you wanted, but looking back on it after maybe a bottle of Chardonnay in the afternoon, you come up with some fond memories of it. Anything kind of stand the test of time, Lino?
Well, if I could just divert your question a little to the right here, I was going to just tell you that I have a lot of road stories when I was in the band, in the rock band era, and they're all the same. I mean, if you watch Spinal Tap,
oh yeah,
if you know that, that I'm just going to repeat stuff that was on there, and that all kind of happens. Mm-hmm. But I had more of if you wanted to ask me about road stories, it would be more of profound experiences that I had. When I was younger, in my 20s, and I was on tour with my rock band at the time in Europe. We were opening up, and I didn't even think about this till I was actually on stage doing this tour. We were opening up at these festivals for a band back in the 80s called Asia.
Oh,
and,
I love Asia.
Yeah, and then also a band that I'm very close to the guys in this band, and I actually played on the lead singer's solo album, a band called Saga. That's, really,
yeah.
Tonight I'm on the Loose. That thing, yeah, right.
Love the song. Oh my God.
So I'm out there playing, and I thought about it, and it just hit me. My first concert I ever went to, where I didn't have my parents escorting me, like I was like 10 or 11 years old. When I was a teenager and I was allowed to go to a concert, the first one I ever went to, and I remember this, it was Asia. And I remember standing in the crowd looking up at the band going, wow, I really want to do that someday. And then I just looked up on stage, I go, and John Wetton's ready to come out after our set, and I'm like, I'm on stage with the first rock band I ever saw. and I just thought, because we were couch tripping it, we were an opening act, and we were really fortunate to be on some of those gigs at the time. And yeah, it was rough living. We had to travel around in the van. The equipment we always had to scramble for, but somehow the shows always pull off. But I was just thinking how fortunate I was to have achieved that goal with that. And then I didn't even realize it until I was through the first couple gigs with these bands. I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty cool thing.
It's a circle of life, in this case, in the world of music. Very, very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
What was the name of the band at the time, your band?
88 Crash. And we got signed to a label in Germany, I think the MTM label. And we did, and a lot of that 88 Crash, it didn't really get picked up on an American label. When I was doing rock music, I kind of missed the window. I started in the mid-'90s and with this rock stuff, and rock had changed a lot. The genre was getting smaller. And I wanted to be in a progressive rock band. My favorite one was Rush.
Ah, there we go. Okay, there you go. That is my favorite band too.
Oh, wow. Well, hey, we do. No
wonder we like each other so much.
Yeah, no, seriously. And I pursued that, and it really wasn't a style that was getting signed anymore in America or promoted. It was grunge music, and now different styles have taken over. And every generation of kids, they're not allowed to like the music their parents do. They have to be rebellious in some way. So they pick something their parents didn't like, and so rock music has kind of taken a back seat. Other styles and genres of music have stepped up to the forefront. But but in any case, yeah, that was I guess that's my story on that.
Awesome, very good. Have you had a chance to ever meet Alex or Ged or
I was so close so many times. Alex Lifeson was my inspiration as a kid.
What a great guitarist. Oh, my goodness.
But what's really interesting is I did so much work with the guys in Saga. And Saga is a band from Toronto, and Toronto's where Rush is from.
Yeah.
And they came up in the same area in the same time, and Rush and Saga were kind of like, and I used to talk to Jim Crichton, and he's the bass player and producer of Saga, and I worked a lot in the studio with him, and he would tell me that he had just been playing tennis with Geddy Lee, and I'm like, God, I really want to meet those. But no, I never did. That's one of the things.
Wow.
I mean, maybe I'll still bump into Alex Lifeson someday. That'd be just mind blowing for me. I mean, because I'm doing what I do because, he inspired me.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing. Links to reach your music. What's the best way to reach your music? If anyone's interested in buying or maybe booking you or something?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, my website should have all the links to all the CDs and where they can be downloaded or purchased, and my website is linomusic.com, Lin as in Nancy, O, music, mynamemusic.com, and I'm on, and this instrumental stuff I do that we're featuring today, that's on the label called Eversound.
Okay.
So you could look up Eversound online. I know that it's on. I'm not sure exactly. The label connects it to like what streaming services and stuff. So it's all over.
Awesome.
I'm sure on most platforms. But if they go to linomusic.com or they go to Eversound. the record label, I'm sure that they can access the music.
If you're in your car and going, oh gosh, I'm going to remember this, it's in the show notes. Just go down to the show notes, click on the link, it'll take you right to Lino's site. Okay, what are your plans for 2023, bud?
2023, I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing for the last 5-6 years, is producing other artists. It's really an interesting thing that evolved in my life I didn't see coming. After my last album, Cascadia, which you're featuring today, it has just been, the universe has just been sending me more and more artists, and good ones too, most in Oregon, but some out of state, into my studio, and I've been producing and helping these artists with their music. Most of them don't have bands. They're just really talented songwriters, composers, whatever, in all kinds of genres. And they just, I guess they like what I do with their stuff, and they keep coming back. Anything, I mean, everything under the sun you can imagine. Heavy rock, singer-songwriter, Americana. I even had a guy come in, and he said, "Can you produce a yoga CD?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I started thinking, what does he mean by that? I had no idea what a yoga CD was. But I said yes, and I got to get into this genre of this new age stuff and put my twist on it. And so, I mean, it's just, it's really, I put my own compositions on hold for a little while I help other people with their music.
You know, that's exactly what this show is all about, too. I mean, I'm not making any money on this show. It is all about getting the word out there. So I think you and I need to work together in 2023 and getting some of those people that you're producing on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
Absolutely, and I just finished a guy who's a genuine cowboy ballads, and like Marty Robbins.
Wow, okay.
And they still, these guys are still out there making this kind of music, and I know the genre is really small compared to other ones, but it's really important to make sure everyone gets heard, especially people that put so much energy and love into their music, you know, and they all have become my friends, and so yeah, it's a pretty cool job.
Awesome, very good. So we're going to have to get together a little bit later and start farming those my way, okay? So we can get them a little love on the radio, okay?
Absolutely.
Last song we're going to feature, Lullaby Blues. You want to tell us a little bit about this composition?
Lullaby Blues. It started out as this kind of melodic acoustic thing I was noodling on, and if you listen to it. A little bit of my former rock self kind of seeped into it. You're going to hear the guitars are a little grittier, some rock blues licks coming in, and then it gets into this mellow, melodic, typical stuff I do on instrumentals. It's a blend of styles, but it has a little bit of a rock edge to it. And yeah, I'm quite fond of it. And Chris Fraser played great drums on it. I really enjoyed his drums on that.
All right, very good. We're going to play that next here on the Lullaby. It's called Lullaby Blues to wrap up the Someone You Should Know podcast with my guest, Lino. Man, it's always great to have you on the show, buddy.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me back, and yeah, I really hope we can get together and I can help get some of the other artists that really deserve to be heard, and we'll talk about that next time.
All right, stay in touch, pal. Have yourself a great 2023. This is Lullaby Blues on the Someone You Should Know podcast.
Hi, this is Rick Anthony, thanking you again for listening to this episode of Someone You Should Know. Now, if you're an aspiring musician or an established musician that's looking for a little exposure, I invite you to drop us a line at someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. That's someoneyoushouldknowpodcast@gmail.com. Also, I invite you to tell a friend about the Someone You Should Know podcast. I thank you for tuning in this time, and I invite you to check us out next time on the Someone You Should Know podcast, because you never know who's going to show up. Until next time, remember, God loves you, and so do I.